Hi lovely friends, thank you so much for being here today. Kim and I have got a very special guest today, Betty from Oak by Bettina. Now Betty challenged us to a textured piece some time back, and it's just so lovely that this day has come that we are going to do a textured piece together. So for my first ever textured piece, I wanted to do a serene sunset. So I've got my modelling paste out, that's what I'm using just now. And I decided to cover my canvas completely and just make sort of a wave filled, a gentle textures look, just to go with experimenting with texture to begin with, as this is my first textured piece. So just using my palette knife, I'm spreading it all the way around the canvas and make it nice and even. And I didn't know what effect this would have, so being my first experiment, I thought, oh, as I go along, I really fancy doing a sunset and just making every part of this serene sunset textured in some way. I wanted to keep it simple, but at the same time I just wanted to go with the flow, and at this stage I have no idea how it's going to turn out. So once I put this to dry and it dried, I painted it in one layer of ultramarine blue. Once it was dried, I got my modelling paste and I used my palette knife and I began to design the waves. And I thought, the sea, I want it to have a gentle wave because it's a sunset, but I still want some movement. So I used my palette knife and I covered the section at the bottom. I used that plastic container that you saw a moment ago just as a guide for the horizon, because I like the horizon to be straight, and that was a guide for me later on. So now I've finished layering the sea and it's dried. I got my Polyfilla and I decided to make a sun out of the Polyfilla. This is a multi-purpose Polyfilla, so you can use any variety. This is literally just one that we had in the house from B&Q in the UK, and I decided to just try it out. I then got a tiny bit and I rolled it up like a snake and then squeezed it together with my 2 fingers, and I made 2 others and it stuck to the canvas. Later on I used a dab of super glue just to make sure that it was attached to the canvas. I then decided to get my Pebeo spray paint, the glossy blue, and just to give it like a hue effect around the edge of the canvas. At this stage, not knowing what effect it was going to have or how it would come out, so you can begin to see that the sea now has got a slightly blue effect on it. I then decided to do a white line on the horizon so that the orange that's going to go on top of it didn't blend, and I just painted that in and then left that to dry as well. That's titanium white. I then got my 3 blues, mixed them all together and poured them, and then I got a paper towel, dipped it in a tiny bit of the white and the blue and just experimented with blending, and I used 1 drop of silicone in the white and used that on the tips of the waves. I'm going over it and over it, so I spent a few minutes doing this and I could not believe how it turned out when it was dry. The 3D effect of the texture and the depth of these blues just came out so beautifully. I'm astounded by it. Just look at the depth of colour there. So then I decided to do my sunset. Now you might be thinking, what about the seagulls and the sun? I thought it doesn't matter if they go blue at this stage, I'm just going to go with it. Now this painting is inspired by AB Creative and her Seascape. So inspiring. I always like to credit the artist that I get an idea from or some inspiration from. So I've put her, if you haven't heard of her already, I've mentioned her channel in my description. So I then went on to use sky blue, and I really enjoyed blending. I'm just at this stage just getting my, so I dampened my paper towel and I swiped across the canvas, just going backwards and forwards as many times as it felt as though the blending was right for me. And I decided to put a bit more blue in, and I'm just spreading it with my palette knife and then going over it with my paper towel, just very slightly dampened. So I really wanted a dark sky, and I really wanted a bit of light blue just above the sun. So I'm just adding now dark blue, light blue, just to make it that bit darker, remembering that all the paints dry a little bit darker than when you first put them on. So I'm looking at the top part now and thinking, oh, I quite like that colour. I quite like that blue above the sun. So I carried on just blending, and I decided then to get some purple and put that just below the light blue. So I'm getting my purple, and this for me is an absolutely gorgeous colour. Just spreading it lightly, I can just see how it goes into the light blue. Really wanted to just play around with this colour, just swiping it across, just being careful to change my piece of paper towel as I was swiping across. So the blues and purples were really blending nicely. I had a couple of bubbles, so I just popped those with my torch, and then I decided to carry on blending for a bit. Then I added my pink. You know, when you have a nice dusky sunset at that time of the evening, when it's just going to dusk, the sun is just dipping, and if you're lucky you get some really beautiful pinks in the sky. I think that's my favourite colour, sky. So I added the pink and I started again to blend, swiping with my paper towel that was slightly dampened. I really did love the pink, so I added a bit more. So I just now blend the pink and the purple before adding another colour. Can you guess which colour I'm going to blend next? So I got my blue, and I put a bit more, I wanted a bit more light underneath, and then a bit more pink. So blending those in gently there, and then discovering that there's a bit of a colour that I wasn't too certain of. So I thought, it's okay, I'll wait for it to dry. And you can see that spillage now. Oh no! So I thought, it's okay, just go with it, keep on blending. And at one point I thought, no, this is going muddy. So I put a bit more pink in, and I thought, it's okay, because I can, with my swiping, I can carry on swiping. I can let it dry, and I can go over it in whichever way I want, because you only get to a point in the painting and you're beginning to really like it, but part of it you don't like. That's where I was now. And I'm just thinking, right, let it dry. So I let it dry, and I got a sponge and I dampened it, and I started to blend. When I get into my work, I just love to get it just how I want it. It's not about getting it right, it's more just getting it how I like it, you know, because if you're painting, it's got to be what makes your heart warm. It's got to make you feel good. It's got to make you feel drawn to it. And the more I was blending, the more I just wanted to lose myself in it, and the colours just came alive, and I wasn't thinking anymore, I was just painting. So I then, once I let it dry, I decided to work on the sun. Now this sun, you might have noticed, is bigger than the original sun. I swapped it in for a slightly bigger one. It didn't feel like the right size for me. And this one I like better because the texture of the sun surface is not smooth, it's textured. And I thought, I'm really going to make a thing about having a textured sun, because I looked it up, And I started to look at it through a microscope and how different the colours were and how bumpy it was and how it's round, but it's not perfectly round. And there's something about having everything I do just not perfect, just imperfectly perfect, because that's nature. Nothing is completely the same. It's all so different and unique. So I just decided to blend and I let it dry, and then I came back and I did some more layering on the sun, and then I got my hands and I just blended and just used the gold on the tips of the waves, just intuitively placing some more white and gold where it felt just right, really. I was using my liner brush to put some white in and some gold, and I used my fingers to put a little bit of grey on the seagulls and a little bit of gold, and I'm using a wipe here just to touch it up a bit. Then I let the sun dry and the seagulls, and I top them up a little bit more with grey and a little bit of gold, just until it felt right. And it doesn't matter if some of the colours goes on the rest of the canvas. The cheeky Panda wipes I tend to use, because even though I use rags, I do find wipes so good for accuracy. Now, can you see in the clouds the original texture that I put onto the canvas and the effect that has in the sky? Now, I like it, but I'd love to know what you think about that, because the bottom half of it has been retextured with the modelling paste. So I'm now just using some more white and dipping it in a little bit of blue to make it slightly grey, because it's dusk, because it's sunset time. It's not too brilliant white, so I wanted to make the colours softer but at the same time vibrant. Oh, I've so enjoyed doing this painting today, and I remember watching Betty from Oak by Bettina some time ago, and one of the textured pieces I said, I need to try this, and she said, you have to try it. And she challenged me, and then she challenged Kim, and we just thought, you know what, we have to do a textured piece all together. So I can't wait to see what Betty has come up with today, and I cannot wait to see what Kim has come up with today. I've put their links in the description. We've got a little playlist, and please do pop along, give them some love, give them a subscribe and a like. They've got some wonderful creations. So I'm now just using my hand. You probably noticed in some of my videos, or most of my videos, I've got gloves on. That's more for the chemicals that I use, but when I'm just using the paint and I'm going over, I love using my fingers. It's so nice being able to touch the canvas and blend with your fingers. And your hands can get really dry if you do it too much, but it's so lovely doing it. You can feel it one with your painting. So I'm just going over the sun now, and I've put a mixture of that orange, which is Mango by TLP, and the other piggy I used was Show Pony, you may have noticed earlier. Beautiful, bringing out the gold and the sunset just below the sun. So as we look closely at the sea and the sunset colours, I'd love to know what you think, and what you think of the blending, what sort of evening it reminds you of, and just look at the texture that's coming through in the sky. So thank you so much for being here today. I would love to know what you think of this piece, and what you think of the colours that have been used today, what you think about the texture and what kind of depth you think it gives. Thank you so much for being here today on this art journey with me. I love seeing your creations. Please carry on sharing with me. Let me know anything you'd like to see. I hope to see you soon, and don't forget, your art is a piece of you. That's why it's special. So you take care, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.
All of your friends' dinners, and I'd save you a place.